Donald Trump just fired Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook, and the British press has lost it. Their headlines range from angst over the threat to the independence of the Fed to pleas that we should pray for the markets. Their articles warn that this undermines the foundations of democracy and prove that Trump is an authoritarian. This, of course, all stems from the fact that you're supposed to believe that unelected bankers making decisions behind closed doors are the key to our democracy and economic stability. But Donald Trump's challenge to the Fed is the opposite from an attack on democracy. It's an assault on London's premier economic weapon, the central banking system. And yesterday's extraordinary cabinet meeting made clear he is establishing something new, the Hamiltonian principle that the wealth of a nation lies in its workers and producers. Listen to how he opened the cabinet meeting.
I want to thank you all for being here as we prepare to celebrate Labor Day, when we honor the incredible, hardworking men and women of our country, which is doing very well, I have to tell you. Every policy of the Trump administration is designed to lift up the American worker, promote great-paying blue-collar jobs, and to rebuild the industrial bedrock of our nation.
Now, the content of that cabinet meeting is as much of a threat to the empire as Trump's Federal Reserve firing. Throughout it, Trump's cabinet challenged core elements of British economic liberalism, free trade, green insanity, and the degradation of society in general. The event was capped by Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins' pronouncement that Trump is leading a third American revolution. I'm Susan Kokinda, and the revival of American economics has been my passion for 50 years, and it's the mission of our Promethean movement. If you've been enjoying these videos and find them educational, please like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And if you know anyone who is political and would like our behind-the-scenes take on this, please share and help us increase our outreach. So in this week's update, I'm going to show you first just how panicked the British financial establishment is over Trump's Fed challenge. Second, what went on in one of the most amazing cabinet meetings in recent history. And third, how the only response of the Democrats and their British masters is to scream fascism, something they themselves embrace. The hysteria coming out of London tells us everything we need to know. Listen to these quotes from the Financial Times. Trump's late-night putsch represents one of the gravest challenges to the Fed since it became independent 74 years ago, and marks a stunning escalation in the president's attack on the U.S. economic establishment. A putsch? Really? For firing a compromised Fed governor? In the same article, the Brookings Institute's David Wessel cites Trump's efforts to get a majority on the Fed as, quote, one more way in which the president is undermining the foundations of our democracy. Last time I checked, the Federal Reserve had nothing to do with the foundations of our democracy, not to mention that we're a republic, not a democracy. Another propaganda arm for British thinking, the New Republic, headlined their coverage, "Meet your new Fed chair, Donald Trump." We knew the president would end the central bank's independence, and for all intents and purposes, now he has. Notice what they're really afraid of: Trump gaining control over monetary policy. Because for more than a century, that control has belonged to the City of London and Wall Street, not the American people. Of course, the central bankers bristle at any challenge to their unconstitutional control. So the Financial Times drew comparisons to Trump to, quote, authoritarian leaders who have tried to bend monetary policy to their will, crushing confidence in economic management. But before we examine Trump's real policies to reassert American economic sovereignty, let's take a moment to look at the subject of all of this sound and fury: Fed Governor Lisa Cook. The reason for her firing is allegations of mortgage fraud. But the real reason should have been her DEI-grounded idiocy. Back in 2023, J.D. Vance, then a senator, confronted her on that in her confirmation hearings, citing her contention that the 2008 financial crash and recession was caused by a lack of diversity. But what you're now about to hear from Trump's unprecedented 3-hour cabinet meeting this Tuesday isn't what the mainstream media wants you to hear. The New York Times mocked it as reality television because they're terrified of what went on. When have you seen a public cabinet meeting devoted to, quote, a celebration of American workers ahead of Labor Day, unquote? For over 3 hours, Trump and his team gave a master class in the Hamiltonian principle that a nation's wealth comes from its workers and producers. The meeting established Trump's Republican Party as the party of the working class, just as the 2024 Republican Party platform pledged. This new alliance was highlighted when President Trump told Labor Secretary Lori Chavez DeRemer to thank Teamster President Sean O'Brien for recommending her. Throughout the meeting, the focus was on the very thing which distinguishes the American system from the British system. The British system values the accumulation of money and power and treats its population and its workers as no more than beasts of burden. The American system says that wealth comes from the human mind, and that it is increasing the productive powers of labor by exerting greater dominion over nature through science and technology. Energy Secretary Chris Wright captured that conflict when he talked about how the American worker has been crushed by the policies of, quote, the wealthy in our country and the coastal elites that live away from where stuff's actually made. They just lost their way and politicians just let them have it. But the American dream isn't dead, it's just been smothered, and we're unsmothering it and setting it loose. The president spoke about the massive investment in new manufacturing plants that's in the pipeline, and that the United States will soon see a surge of new jobs. But he also pointed out that new jobs have already opened up in auto plants simply by restarting idled capacity, something which UAW President Sean Fain had mentioned earlier. I found that talking about Trump's commitment to make the United States a manufacturing superpower always prompts the question, where is the skilled workforce going to come from? So I was really happy to hear the Labor Secretary speak about the fact that grants have already been given for 185,000 skilled trade apprenticeships, and that this is just the first step on the way to fulfilling President Trump's executive order to create 1 million skilled apprenticeships. Now, these are all points which Promethean Action highlighted in its groundbreaking ebook, What President Trump Can Do with the American System 2.0, which we published before Trump was elected last November. You can get your own copy, so see the link in the description, and we'll tag the product in this video. But it was Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins speaking about the importance of Labor Day that probably sent the biggest shock to the degenerate imperial elites.
This is our day. America was founded and fought for by fishermen and farmers and workmen and et cetera. The Genesis, the first book of the Bible, talks about the righteousness of work and the art of creation. And so to be part of this effort to represent the farmers, the ranchers, the agriculture industry at this moment in time, which I do believe we're in a revolution. 1776 was the first one, 1863 or so with Abraham Lincoln was the second. This is the third, with Donald Trump leading the way, and we are saving America.
She said it, from Alexander Hamilton and George Washington to Abraham Lincoln to Donald Trump. This is the third American Revolution. Now, how do the Democrats and their imperial handlers respond to this? All they can do is scream fascism and authoritarianism, just as the Financial Times did in their coverage of Trump and the Fed firing. This has become the theme of the TDS-dominated memes on social media in their reaction to a new banner which is now hanging on the Labor Department. Do they notice that a Republican president is celebrating American workers? No. Instead, their full-spectrum information warfare went into overdrive, producing scores, if not hundreds, of memes comparing the Trump banner to banners of Stalin, Lenin, or Mao Zedong. And of course, Democratic presidential hopefuls like Illinois Governor Pritzker are all lined up and ready to defend democracy from President Trump's authoritarian drive to stop crime in our cities. But here's the real story. The forces cooking up these attacks against Trump are the very forces which have called for fascism with a human face. Back in the 1970s, when the Trilateral Commission was designing the globalist system that we're currently living under, they explicitly endorsed what they called corporatism, and they knew exactly what that meant. In an article entitled The Coming Corporatism, published in the magazine of the Trilateral's Initiative Committee for National Economic Planning, they said, "Let us not mince words. Corporatism is fascism with a human face. Or how about the Daily Telegraph, which leads the charge every day against the so-called fascism of Donald Trump or English patriots who are standing up to the British government? Well, back in the day, the Telegraph carried a piece by an Oxford professor, Norman Stone, which said that, quote, fascism with a human face is the next stage of Western development. So when you hear the Democrats and their British handlers screaming about Trump's fascism, remember, they're the ones who literally advocated for fascism with a human face. They built a system where unelected technocrats and central bankers made all the important decisions while maintaining the facade of democracy. And those are the decisions which tore down the living standards of working people and which Donald Trump is reversing. What we're witnessing isn't just a political fight. It's the opening phase of a new American revolution. Trump isn't just changing personnel or policies. He's dismantling an entire imperial financial architecture and replacing it with a modern version of the American system. And he's turning the Republican Party into the party of working men and women. That's why they're in a panic. Promethean Action has been leading the charge to make that transformation a reality. This is why your support for Promethean Action is so crucial. We're providing the analysis and the strategic framework that helps you understand what Trump is doing, and we give you the organizing material to do something about it. So subscribe to our free newsletter, or better yet, become a paying member to support our outreach. The British Empire is panicking because they know their time is up, because it is time for the Third American Revolution. So stay focused, stay mobilized, and thanks for watching.
Please take a moment and subscribe to our free newsletter at prometheanaction.com.